Bill did not discover the betrayal in a single explosive moment. It unfolded with cruel precision, like a slow incision that cut deeper the more he tried to ignore the pain. For months, he had sensed a shifting undercurrent of secrecy woven into ordinary days. Hayley's absences carried new explanations, polished and effortless. Randy's loyalty felt rehearsed rather than instinctive. Bill dismissed his suspicions as paranoia born from stress, convincing himself that doubt was a weakness unworthy of a man who prided himself on control. Trust, he believed, was a strength. It made him civilized, measured, superior to petty jealousy. The truth dismantled that illusion. Evidence surfaced not through dramatic confrontation, but through patterns too consistent to deny. Late-night messages that vanished too quickly. Financial irregularities that made no logical sense. Meetings framed as business, but conducted in shadows. Bill's mind, once resistant, began assembling fragments into something undeniable. The realization struck him with humiliating clarity. The two people he had defended most fiercely had been constructing a separate reality behind his back. Anger rose first, raw and blinding. It was not merely the pain of romantic betrayal. It was the deeper wound of strategic deception. Hayley had not simply strayed, she had calculated. Randy had not stumbled into temptation, he had participated in a deliberate alliance. Bill felt stripped of dignity, his trust exposed as naivete. He replayed every shared moment with obsessive intensity, searching for signs he should have seen. Each memory transformed into an accusation against himself. Humiliation festered beneath the rage. Bill's identity had always been anchored in authority and perception. He controlled outcomes, anticipated threats, stayed steps ahead. To realize he had been outmaneuvered in his own life shattered that self-image. The betrayal was not just emotional, it was strategic warfare. Hayley and Randy had not simply fallen into each other, they had exploited proximity, access, vulnerability. They had used Bill's trust as camouflage. Hayley, meanwhile, lived in a state of suspended panic long before exposure arrived. Her relationship with Randy had begun as a reckless escape, a reaction to the suffocating structure of life with Bill. She told herself she deserved passion, spontaneity, something unrestrained by expectation. Randy offered validation without judgment, admiration without pressure. What began as emotional refuge evolved into something more dangerous, a partnership built on shared resentment. Hayley resented Bill's dominance, his quiet control disguised as protection. She felt diminished by his certainty, invisible beneath his calculated composure. With Randy, she felt seen, desired, powerful. Yet beneath that empowerment lurked dependency. Randy understood her vulnerabilities too well. He encouraged her dissatisfaction, amplified her grievances, nurtured her sense of injustice. Together, they built a narrative in which Bill was the obstacle, the oppressor, the barrier to their fulfillment. Randy's motivations were more complex than simple lust. Beneath his charm lay ambition sharpened by years of feeling overshadowed. Bill represented everything Randy envied: status, influence, unshakable confidence. Becoming entangled with Hayley was not just emotional conquest. It was symbolic defiance. It allowed him to infiltrate the life he believed he deserved, but could not attain alone. Each stolen moment felt like reclaiming something denied to him. When Bill finally confronted the evidence, He did not erupt outwardly. The stillness that settled over him was far more unsettling. Rage condensed into something colder, more deliberate. He refused to allow them the satisfaction of seeing him unravel. Instead, he observed, calculated, waited. His silence became a weapon sharper than accusation. Hayley sensed the change immediately. Bill's composure transformed into distance so absolute it felt suffocating. The warmth that once defined his presence vanished, replaced by scrutiny. She realized too late that her underestimation of him had been fatal. Bill was not a man who reacted impulsively. He retaliated strategically. Fear replaced defiance, but pride prevented confession. Randy attempted to maintain control, urging patience, insisting that suspicion did not equal proof. Yet his confidence faltered as Bill's behavior grew more precise. Meetings were rescheduled without explanation. Access to resources narrowed. Subtle shifts signaled that Bill was no longer unaware. Randy's bravado cracked under pressure, revealing insecurity he had long concealed. The confrontation, when it came, was inevitable. Bill laid out the evidence methodically, not to seek answers, but to demonstrate certainty. There was no room for denial. The weight of undeniable truth crushed the fragile alliance between Hayley and Randy. Their shared narrative disintegrated under exposure, replaced by mutual blame. Hayley felt cornered, her justifications collapsing. She had convinced herself the affair was about reclaiming autonomy. But faced with Bill's controlled fury, she saw it reflected as betrayal devoid of nobility. Guilt surged alongside resentment. She hated him for forcing her into accountability, hated herself for miscalculating, hated Randy for drawing her into something she could no longer defend. Randy's reaction was more volatile. His ambition curdled into desperation. Exposure threatened not only his relationship, but his standing, his future. He lashed out defensively, framing himself as a victim of circumstance, of emotional manipulation, of power imbalance. Yet beneath the rationalizations pulsed fear. Bill's silence promised consequences more devastating than scandal. Bill's internal conflict intensified in the aftermath. Part of him wanted immediate destruction, public exposure, professional ruin, total severance. Another part craved control over the narrative. Revenge required precision, not impulse. He wrestled with the morality of retaliation, questioning whether becoming ruthless would validate their portrayal of him as cold and domineering. Hayley and Randy found themselves isolated not only from Bill, but from each other. The unity forged in secrecy fractured under scrutiny. Suspicion replaced passion. Each wondered who would betray the other first to secure survival. The intimacy that once felt intoxicating now felt like liability. As tension escalated, decisions became irreversible. Bill tightened his grip on assets and alliances, ensuring neither Hayley nor Randy could maneuver freely. Hayley contemplated confession as a means of reclaiming dignity, but fear of losing everything paralyzed her. Randy considered escape, distancing himself before consequences crystallized. Yet abandoning Hayley would confirm the opportunism Bill likely suspected. The psychological battlefield expanded beyond personal betrayal into a struggle for power and identity. Bill sought not merely justice but restoration of authority. Hayley grappled with the collapse of her self-image as misunderstood victim. Randy fought against the exposure of his envy-driven ambition. In the end, the question was not whether Hayley and Randy would pay for their betrayal, but how. Consequences manifested not only in external loss, but internal fracture. Trust once broken did not regenerate. It calcified into permanent skepticism. Relationships dissolved into strategic positioning. Love, if it had ever existed sincerely among them, suffocated beneath calculation. Bill emerged altered, hardened by the realization that proximity breeds vulnerability. Hayley confronted the devastating cost of confusing rebellion with empowerment. Randy faced the emptiness of conquest achieved through deception. None escaped untouched. The betrayal did not conclude with a dramatic collapse, but with lingering tension. A quiet understanding that actions driven by resentment and ambition rarely end cleanly. In exposing Hayley and Randy, Bill reclaimed control, but at the expense of the illusion that trust could ever be unconditional again.